Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Holder, where I talk with interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest this evening is Alan Jacoby, host of the Great Divide podcast. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Steve. Hope all is well.
So, tell us a little bit about you for those who've never heard of you. Well, give us a little background.
Sure. Thank you for having me, first of all. My name is Alan Jacoby. I'm from Long Island, New York. You know, that little piece that hangs off of off of New York State. I'm a business owner, entrepreneur, podcaster. I love politics. I love current events. I love family. Just an all around guy, I'd say.
Okay. Okay. And you have a podcast called The Great Divide. Tell us about that.
I do. The Great Divide. It's political commentary in the divisive political climate that we're in. From my perspective, I like to look at things. I like to think I think differently than a lot of people. That's not good or bad. Just have a different perspective. I am a Republican, but it doesn't mean that I agree with everything that Republicans do. So, it's unedited, unfiltered, unfiltered, uncensored. I get into it and I speak my mind.
Yeah.
I speak how I feel.
Well, that's the way I do. It's definitely unfiltered and unedited. I wouldn't even know how to start editing. So that's cool. Everything, it is what it is.
Yeah, we're all humans.
Yeah, there you go. So what got you into podcasting?
Well, I wanted a platform that I could express myself, I guess, uncensored. I think I wouldn't call myself an offensive person, but unfortunately in the social media world today, everything is offensive. So things that I might want to post on social media, that they're not, I guess, acceptable, violating community standards. And I was in Facebook jail a lot, and I was in Facebook jail too much. And I, no obscenities or anything obscene, but unfortunately, you say the wrong thing and it offends somebody and they hit the report button. Well, podcasting, you can't do that. It's your own platform.
Yeah.
And I didn't know much about it. And I knew, I knew what podcasts were, but I didn't realize how easy it was to start one. Yeah.
I realized last year when I was running for U.S. Congress, when I was getting interviewed quite often, I often wanted to be on the other side of the equation. Instead of being put on the spot, I wanted to ask the questions. So I thought I'd try this. And it's very interesting. I enjoy it.
You get to learn a lot about people if you're doing guests and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been podcasting now?
Not long at all. I've released 11 episodes, and the first one went out only on February 11th. I released 3 episodes. I did a lot of research on it. I'm brand new, and it's exciting because even being brand new and having a lot to say and putting out the content, you watch, you do it yourself and you get to see how it grows. This morning I looked and, there's a lot of downloads. And from what I understand from this morning, I think I'm in 24 states and 5 countries. I don't really know what that means. I guess that means people are listening.
Yeah,
whether they like what I say or not is another story, but they're listening. So it's I'm brand new, and I'm really enjoying it.
Good. Do you have a favorite guest so far?
I haven't had a guest. I haven't.
It's just you.
It's just me. It's just I'm solo. I take a topic, a few topics, and I talk about it. I rant about it. I'm. It's the first, and it's the first time I'm being on somebody's show. So you.
I'm honored.
Yeah, well, I'm honored for you to have me. I think it's great. I have a couple other people that have asked me to be on. Someone in Canada that wants to speak to an American about so the our past president Donald Trump and things like that. So it's nice to be invited to speak with other people.
Yeah, like I was telling you before the broadcast, that background you got there is awesome, man. You need to do videos.
Yeah, my wife was telling me that too. She said, "Oh, this is great. You should do videos." I have a lamp sitting on my desk. All kinds of weird lighting in here to make it look right.
It looks great. I think I'm going to come to see you before I do my next podcast. Can I borrow your chair there?
Yeah, come on down.
Okay. What would you tell somebody that wants to get into podcasting? What advice would you give them?
Do it.
Do it?
If you have a voice, if you have an opinion, if you have, and it doesn't have to be politics. That's why I did it. I love talking politics. I love to debate. I love having discussions, respectful discussions, whether we agree or disagree. And that's what I wanted to do. And just speak my mind. But if you have something that you think is of value that other people might want to listen to, do it. It's not a lot of money to start.
Right.
Some people can do it from their cell phones. I put a little bit of money into it.
Yeah.
I wanted to do it a certain way. You're not going to become the next Joe Rogan, but you never know what it might come to be. So some people are making a living doing this. And just don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because I went back and forth about doing it. And then I sat and I tried to record my first episode, and it's not live, obviously. So you have the opportunity to edit and everything else. And everything they say about it is true. If you read about podcasting, you hate the sound of your own voice on recording, which I still do to this day. I won't listen to my podcasts. I have somebody else edit them. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I deleted my first podcast. I don't know, a dozen times at least. I sat there for 5 hours to record 45 minutes because
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know. But now I just get on, I flip on the microphone and I talk to myself for right now.
Okay. Well, that works. So what's your favorite podcast that you listen to?
Like I mentioned, I like Joe Rogan. I like a little the political podcasts. I like Ben Shapiro. I like Mike Knowles. Senator Ted Cruz has one now called The Verdict with Ted Cruz. I enjoy that one. And I've been dabbling in some of the true crime podcasts. There's a podcast for everything out there. I can't even believe it. And I can't believe the amount of people in America that have that are involved in it or listening to it. And they say, I think half the country is at least listening to one podcast. Yeah.
Well, it's fun. I enjoy it. I evidently started about the same time you did. This would be my 13th episode. And sometimes I will do 4 or 5 a week. I don't have a schedule. I'm just enjoying it. It's just a hobby,
Right. I get
to meet cool people like you.
Yeah, it is a hobby. And the more I look at it, the more I would like to bring it beyond a hobby, and do something more with it. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. So you like to talk about politics and current events?
I do. And I stress when I talk about politics, I love to hear everybody's opinion. I love to hear everybody's perspective. We may not agree, but I want to hear it. And I would never, you know what they say when you're sitting at Thanksgiving dinner, don't bring up politics. And I don't, because I have family members they're completely on the other side of the spectrum. And unfortunately, you know how some political conversations can get, or because of the people that are engaging in them. I mean,
yeah,
they tend to not end well. It really depends on who the other person is you're having the conversation with. But I do enjoy it.
I got into some very unpleasant, not YouTube, but Facebook debates last year when I was running for office. I
I'm
mean,
sure.
some people really gave me a rough time.
I'm sure.
Uh,
And
And of
it's,
course, when you defend yourself, then you come across as a bad guy.
you know, so talking about Facebook really quick. When I talked about why I'm doing podcasting and not so much posting my mind as I would talk here on a podcast as I would on Facebook because of the community standards you violate. You know, my but friends of mine joke they call me a Facebook fugitive because I don't even get warnings anymore. And if somebody reports me, they will put me in Facebook jail for 30 days at a clip. And then when I'm out of Facebook jail, that's always the running joke. Oh, Alan's out of Facebook jail. How long is he going to last? I say 12 hours. And again, we could talk about social media and social media censorship for hours, but some of the things that that they really get you for are it's a little ridiculous,
Crazy, yeah.
But no one should be attacked on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I would never attack anybody on Facebook. And if you ran for Congress and somebody didn't like your views, I'm sure you were attacked. I'm sure you were. I'm attacked. I'm attacked on Facebook. Today I was attacked by somebody all out name calling. All I did was ask a simple question, and
Yeah.
I simply replied back, well, I hope you have a nice day, and I'm sorry you're not that tolerant.
So just to give folks an idea about how this conversation came about with you and me, I posted something on a podcast forum for podcasters, and I asked the question about who would like to talk about the new legislation some politicians are trying to get passed will makes it more acceptable to run over protesters who are blocking traffic in the streets. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, one, your post stood out to me because the day before I saw your post about that, I was talking to somebody about this, another Republican. So I don't agree with it at all. I have, I have, I guess maybe two different ways of looking at it. First of all, nobody has any right to run somebody over and get away with it. There should be no law protecting someone to run somebody over. Now, the flip side of that, and I believe it was this bill came about in Oklahoma. It was a Republican in Oklahoma that presented this. I don't think it was signed into law, but it was presented about protecting people, granting civil and criminal immunity for anybody who runs somebody over during a protest. It's absurd. So if I'm in a car and I come up on a protest and I didn't know it was there and I happen to get stuck in the middle of it, anybody, if they're surrounding your car yelling its obscenities, just because you're afraid doesn't give you the right to put the pedal to the metal and run over the 10 protesters in front of you. And there shouldn't be a law that gives anybody immunity to civil liability or criminality. It's just, I don't agree with it. However, the flip side of that, if you're in your vehicle and you're on now that protest and it's turning violent, if your interior of your vehicle gets penetrated, meaning, I mean, obviously your doors are locked, but if somebody's going to break a window, it doesn't take much to pull somebody out of the car. I mean, we've seen that plenty of times, or get a door open. I mean, look at the riots in Los Angeles, what they did to Reginald Denny when they pulled him out of the semi truck, right?
Yeah.
They beat him half to death, and a helicopter sat there and videoed it the whole time. It was horrific. If your personal safety, let me word it like, if your life is in jeopardy and somebody breaks that window, they're not breaking that window to give you a cookie. Okay. It is escalated. If I was that person in the driver's seat, yes, I'm going to protect my life and whoever's lives are in the car with me, if it's my family.
Yeah.
And I actually, I'm going to bring up an example that you may even recall it. And I will drive through, and if I run somebody over, which I hope I don't want to hurt anybody, don't want to kill anybody, but I want to protect myself. I want to get out of there. And if it happens where you have to do that, you shouldn't just go home and forget it didn't happen. I mean, that's leaving a scene of an accident. Not there, depending on what state you're in. There are all kinds of laws for that. But to protect your life, is it self-defense? I don't know. But now there will be an investigation. Most likely that altercation is going to be on somebody's cell phone video.
Oh, yeah.
So whether it has to be civilly dealt with or criminally dealt with, there'll be witnesses and video. No, I'm not for legislation allowing people, because then I'll call them the people that are rah, 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 this bill is great, I can run over protesters, the yahoos, and that's what I call them, the yahoos. Not a fan of them. No, you can't run over protesters. But I'll also say, I don't believe protesters should be blocking public roadways.
Yeah.
And I have a reason for that. But just on this topic, not to just keep rambling, you could tell me to shut up anytime you want. I don't know if you recall, it was back in June. There was in Virginia, Fredericksburg.
Fredericksburg, I remember.
Fredericksburg. Okay, remember the woman Tara Durant and her 12-year-old daughter?
Yeah.
Tara Durant and a 12-year-old daughter were in the car. They happened to, it was after the George Floyd incident. They drove through a mob of people. They got violent. She called 911. First of all, Tara Durant, I believe, handled this great. She called 911, and there's recordings of the 911 call all over the internet. You can hear it. And she was deathly afraid. She had a 12-year-old daughter in the car, and she said, "There's a mob around my car. They're yelling obscenities. They're trying to get in my car, and they're screaming at me." And the dispatcher tells her, "Well, we can't send officers there. We can't do anything because it's a sanctioned event." Can you imagine? Can you imagine if that was your wife? If that was anybody with their 12-year-old, and now the law enforcement, it's 2020, and law enforcement on the phone is telling you they can't come and help you because it's a sanctioned event. And in the next breath, you should call City Hall and air your concerns. Yeah. That's a problem. But she got out of there. She was able to drive out of there slowly. It did not escalate to that point.
Yeah.
But no.
I'm like you, I mean, nobody has a right to run anybody over.
No.
But if your life is in danger, you really feel threatened, like you said, if they break your window, then you got to do what you got to do, especially if you have family in your car.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I respect people's right to peacefully protest, as I believe you do too.
100%.
But that doesn't include blocking traffic. Now, I don't think they should be allowed to block traffic, but you shouldn't be allowed to run over them just because you want to. So I can see like you both sides of that.
Yeah. And, just think about the hazards, the public safety hazards in blocking public roadways.
Yeah.
If protesters really think that's going to make people pay attention to what you're protesting about, it's not. What it is doing, though, is it's causing, if someone needs police assistance or medical assistance, and the first responders can't get through that traffic because it's being blocked by protesters, you might be indirectly responsible for something bad happening to somebody else.
Yeah.
So that's the big reason for me on the whole, you shouldn't be blocking public roadways.
Yeah. I think probably that got more adversity to their cause than it did people aligning with their cause. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
So what about what happened at the Capitol on January the 6th? What do you think about that?
Horrific. Should have never happened. The people that entered the Capitol, they're bad actors. They need to be held accountable, which they're rounding them up. Listen. there are bad actors in every group. And not going to get into the, the what's good for one is good for the other. Um, all of those people that entered into that Capitol and caused the mayhem and violence and destruction and death, they're pieces of garbage. I'll censor myself for your show. If it was my show, it'd be a little different. I touched on this and I used some other
Yeah,
choice
I'm with you
words.
so far.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It's actually hard to put words to it. And it's embarrassing too, because I actually knew two people who made national news, two retired civil servants that took selfies in the rotunda. And it's sad because these two people are great people, and I know one of them very well. And the reason he went in is because he saw people going in, and he was in a different area where there wasn't like fights with law enforcement. Because I mean, if you watch the live video that day, which I did from my living room, you could see people peacefully, I won't use the word peacefully, nonchalantly walking in the Capitol like they own the place, not in like the other parts that they showed with the people coming in mobs and crushing Capitol police officers through doors and using barricades. But there was a part where you could just see them walking through, and there were two Capitol police officers there. Well, that's where he walked, and he went in and he took a selfie of himself. And a lot of people, I think that if you entered the place, you were wrong. There were people that entered the place to walk around like they were on a tour, but the majority of the people there were doing what they were doing and just causing mayhem.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because I feel like there were people there that were victims of circumstance that saw an opportunity and made a bad decision to walk in there and take a picture, and then they went home. And they took those pictures surfaced, and the FBI came and knocked on their door and arrested them. And now, there's people
Yeah.
are suffering, not suffering, facing federal charges.
I think they've arrested, what, 200 or 300 now, something like
Yeah, I
that.
think they said something around 300, and that there's going to be more. There's so much. I'm one of those people, let the investigation play out. And I'm all about facts. I don't like the fabrication of facts. Again, there's so many opinions on it. I have mine. I watched as much of it as I could to form my opinions on how I feel. But the incident itself, it should have never happened. My brother-in-law was at the rally. He drove from New Hampshire, and he didn't go to the Capitol after. Him and his friend, both active military. They went to the rally and they left. I texted him when it started, and I said, "Where are you? They're storming the Capitol." And he said, "I just heard. I'm in the car on my way back to New Hampshire." And he couldn't believe it. And he said there were over 150,000 people there. 150,000 people did not storm the Capitol.
Right.
I don't know what the number was. It looked like a couple thousand, and it looked well orchestrated.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, apparently it was planned for months.
that's what I'm hearing. And until I get, the FBI, or they did come out and say that it was planned at least days in advance. Maybe it was months, and I want to see what comes of it. You know, and I unfortunately, the media is all over the place with it. So I want to hear when they decide to report on what information comes from the investigations.
Do you think anybody in the Trump family incited that or had any part in that?
No, I don't. And I don't, because I watched the speech, and the words in that speech were not insightful. Every politician uses the word fight like hell, and fight And a fight like hell is used a lot on both sides. Yeah, that's not inciting violence. Inciting violence would be not march to the Capitol peaceful to have your voices heard. Insightful would be you go to that Capitol and you know, do what you do, do what they did. You break down those doors and you get in there and you do what you did. Listen, words are words. And this is just something, there are so many angles to talk about with this. I sat there and I watched that impeachment trial. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I think the articles of impeachment were poorly drafted, and they were attorneys that drafted those, who are members of Congress. One charge, and then throughout the whole trial, all they wanted, I called it the trial of tweets. I did an episode on that, the trial of tweets, because, and in essence, that's what it was. I think if those articles of impeachment added a second charge, is what they spoke about a lot in the trial. If they added a second charge of, say, dereliction of duty of the president of the United States, failure to act, failure to defend the Constitution, and defend the United States, I think maybe they would have been able to persuade maybe more Republicans to vote to convict. I don't know. I'm not a politician. We know that they play
Well,
games in that swamp.
yeah, and I don't think you'll be surprised when I tell you I disagree with you on that, because I really think Trump is responsible for that. He pretty much promised that he was not going to go peacefully. And even though what you said, you don't take those as his words to be taken literally, a lot of his followers did, obviously. They thought they had marching orders from the president of the United States. They felt like the election had been stolen. So you do understand that a lot of people did take it that way.
Oh, I do. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. I don't believe the election was stolen. And like listen, this is an election like we've never seen before.
Yeah.
The COVID-19 pandemic completely destroyed the, I guess, the fabric of America, of everything that we do and take for
The whole
granted, and do
world.
the whole world,
I think we're all in PTSD.
Yeah. But I, like any election, whether it was this election or other elections, I think there are always irregularities, but no, I mean, I'm not one of those people that believe the election was stolen. And I get abused for saying that from fellow Republicans, that not all of them, because not every Republican believes that the election was stolen. Most don't. And there are extremists on both sides, and those people that stormed the Capitol were extremists.
Yeah.
But going back to people saying that they truly believe Donald Trump told them to be there, I go back to the trial where they were putting up statements from people that were there, saying to various news outlets and releasing statements saying that after they were arrested and charged federally, that, yeah, Donald Trump told us to be there and to storm the Capitol. Okay, so my feeling on that, these people showed up to the Capitol and did what they did, whether some of them had that intention of doing that day, or again, maybe victims of circumstance. They were there and they did it, and they were arrested and they were charged federally. They lost their jobs. They've destroyed their lives in an instant, okay, with these federal charges, because there's going to come a time when their cases are heard and there's going to be sentencing. But with all of that pressure on you, especially maybe people, probably most of them don't have any criminal records, most of them, I think they would say and do anything, especially say anything to anyone who is willing to hear, especially orchestrated by their defense attorneys, to say that, or anything that would make them looked at in a different light, hopefully, and that at the conclusion of their trial at sentencing, or that maybe they have leniency, you know, for their cases and their sentencing. I don't believe any of those people that give these statements, these public statements to news outlets that said Donald Trump made me do it, that they're truthful. I think it's all orchestrated by their defense teams. I mean, the son of Sam in New York City in 1970s went around killing young couples, and it was because his neighbor's dog told him to do it. I just don't buy it. It's just me. But I get the flip side of it. You know, Donald Trump's not a politician. He's a little quick with his mouth, as am I. I said early in his presidency that the Secret Service should have taken his phone away, you know, and only let him have it at certain times, like a toddler.
And his Twitter account.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Take his cell phone away so he can't tweet. You know, I don't. Yeah, it's one of those things, though, that the whole event is tragic. I've lived through traumatic events. I've had vast life experiences. I worked in EMS in New York City. I lived and worked through the whole, you know, tragedy on 9/11. I lost 24 friends that day, close friends that I grew up with. You know, I suffer from PTSD, you know, to this day. I was 21 when that happened. I'm 42. So people are going to suffer from PTSD, of course, but we have to heal from it together. And the problem is, like every other incident now and every other crisis, it gets politicized.
Yeah.
And it gets politicized by, I call them swamp trolls. It's big in my podcast. I call the swamp trolls in government, the members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats. Maybe they're not all that, but that's my label for most of them. And they fan the flames of the divide and the hate.
Sure.
And then the mainstream media feeds on it and promotes that.
Yeah.
And that causes that divide between the left and the right and the people in the middle.
And that's where you got the great divide, I'm sure.
It's exactly where it came from.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think of the name of a friend of mine. I had people saying, you should do a podcast. You should do this. You should do that. And I decided on the podcast, and a buddy of mine, he's a police officer. He said, you should call it the Great Divide because of everything I said. And I was thinking of names. I said, you know what?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah. We are definitely in the great divide, and it's sad, but I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. And it's just, so many people are so attached to their beliefs and their feelings and their rage and their anger, and you know, they don't want to hear anybody else's opinions.
And that's the problem. And I'm going to tell you my perspective as far as that. I don't expect people. I'm going to say the left, because this is where I'm having my issues with people. If I want to engage in a conversation like you and I are on I'd say we're on opposite sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
But we can have a conversation and talk about it.
Yeah.
As humans, as Americans, because left wing, right wing, we're the same bird. We're Americans.
Exactly.
But the problem I'm having is a conversation like you and I are having, and where we're throwing points out. The moment I don't agree, and not say something like, "Oh, I don't agree with you. Your opinion is crap." No, it's all right. So we can have different opinions. The moment I do, or it's like they attack my humanity, whether it's in person or on social media, the name calling,
Yeah.
the screaming, and the tantrums, because they just don't want to hear it. And that's the problem. And
each side is thoroughly convinced the other side is evil, not just wrong, but evil. And that's a big problem. That's a big problem.
so I can agree with that to a point. Absolutely. So most people on the right that I talk to, they, I feel like when I say, a lot of people agree with me when I say it's not the Democrat American. It's not you. It's the people that you're electing. Because I don't believe that the run of the mill, hardworking American who's registered Democrat wants a crisis politicized. But unfortunately, I live in a blue state. I'm in New York. I'm trapped in a blue bubble here. The politicians here, they love that politicizing of everything to show that Republicans are bad. Republicans are bad. Democrats are not. And they pound that into their constituents.
Yeah.
I
And it's just the opposite here. Same thing, just opposite parties.
right, right. So it's I, I don't I don't know what I that I don't know how the two can come to the table and work together until the people in Congress work together. I like to say I always say Congress, because to me, I think that's where most of our political issues that divide us lie. Because I look at the presidency and I say this to people and I say, my opinion, it does not matter who the temporary government employee is that occupies the White House for 4 to 8 years, because they're temporary. And this all comes in cycles, whether it's 4 or 8 years, and they're gone. The problem is the people in Congress who have made political careers on our dime for 30, 40, and almost 50 years that are doing nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. All they're doing is dividing us and making us hate each other. And then I feel like they use the media to fan those flames. So
Well, they're doing one other thing. They're making $174,000 a year while they're doing that, regardless if they do good or bad.
yes,
That's
they
not a
are.
bad gig.
No, it's like, it's like being a weatherman, whether you're right or wrong or do anything, you're still going to get paid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's some of the things that they try to put through the House are just, ridiculous. We could probably do a whole political episode on the bills that are going through and have fun with it.
So I'm guessing you probably voted for Trump twice.
I did.
Would you do it again if he runs in 2024?
I don't know yet. So I have feelings on that. I don't know. And I don't know if he's going to run again. If he ran again, and at that time he's going to be 77, 78. Who knows what's going to happen in 3 years? If he ran again and won the Republican nomination, which if he ran again, he's going to win the Republican nomination. Yeah, I probably would, because I'm not going to vote for whoever they decide. If President Biden is still going to be with us, or as a president in 4 years, I could not vote for him, nor his current vice president. I disagree with everything that they stand for, not because they're Democrats, but because of what they stand for. Because I feel like the left agenda now is not what every Democrat in America stands for. I truly believe that. What I'd like to see Donald Trump do, to be honest with you, is because listen, I'm a Republican, and I want the power to shift in 2022. I do. I'm thinking about running for a congressional seat myself. Who knows? I've done crazy things. I want him to use his influence, because we know he has it. I mean, whether people like it or not, he still is the leader of the Republican Party, and I think he will be for a long time, until he decides he doesn't want to be. To use his influence to rebuild the Republican Party and take over the House. I mean, the Republicans are at odds with each other as well. It's I probably pay attention to that more than the run-of-the-mill Democrat does. I mean, they are finding young and upcoming, Republicans, conservatives who believe in the values of conservatism to primary current Republicans that are in Congress to get them out. Not because the media says they voted against Donald Trump's impeachment. That could be a reason in there, but for the mostly is that they're not doing anything. They're not, I use the word again, fight like hell. Every politician, Republican, Democrat, uses it. And there's a lot of people in that Congress that just aren't doing it. They're sitting there, like you said, collecting that $174,000 and doing nothing.
Somebody told me when I was running that politics is war. And, I believe that.
It is.
Yeah.
It's
So
war.
you have political heroes, Alan?
I really admire Ronald Reagan. For the more of my reading of what I've done on him. Ronald Reagan was president when I was born. So, I didn't
voted
get
for
to
him twice. Can you believe that?
really.
I did.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you why I like Ronald Reagan. You were old enough to understand and vote for Ronald Reagan. I liked Ronald Reagan because he didn't seem to me like the run-of-the-mill politician. I know he did his things in movies, and things like that. He had this, just this real human aspect to him. This he was witty, he was funny, he was a human. He wasn't a political robot. I'll be honest. That's why I supported Donald Trump when he ran. I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like him as a man. Like I've met him before he was president. And I not someone I'd be friends with or want to have a talk with. Ronald Reagan is someone that I would want to sit with in a room for as long as he would allow me, maybe to finish a good cigar and just pick his brain. Okay. I would say he would probably be my biggest political hero, and maybe for ending the Cold War. I mean, he did the fight with communism, and it's going to sound funny, but one of the biggest reasons I really like him is you may have remembered it when he was shot. It was like 2 months or so after he was shot. He was doing a speech in I think West Berlin, and there was so many people there. It's on YouTube. It's a great video, and he's in the middle of this speech, and a balloon pops in the crowd, and it was so loud, and he stops for a second, and he says, "You missed. You missed me," and he was just there was an attempt on his life to assassinate him 2 months prior. And he just shrugs it off and says, you missed me, and attempts to go right back into his speech, but the crowd went wild. And it's just, every time he would come out and say something, there was always a joke. There was always that little bit of real, authentic humility, not come out and just tell a stupid joke because you want to try to be funny as the president. I think he was or an authentic. He just had that authenticity to him as a human.
He had a lot of class too, him and
that's the word, Steve. He had a lot. He had a lot of class.
The reason I liked him at that time, right before he took office, we had all those prisoners in Iran, American hostages that had been there for, if I remember correctly, over a year. Yeah. And Jimmy Carter had tried once or twice and failed to get them out. As soon as Ronald Reagan, even before he took office, just his rhetoric, what he was running on, they released those hostages before he even came into power. Now, that was impressive. That's what made me like him. And Jimmy Carter, he was a great man. I love the man. He does great things for the country, but he was a sorry president. He was a sorry president.
They have that term they used for him. He was a lame duck.
Yeah,
Would you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Ronald Reagan definitely was classy. That was controversial. That
It
Iran. That
was.
was,
Yeah.
but that was that was the Contra. But
No, the
no,
Contras was in
no.
Nicaragua.
That's right, Nicaragua. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, right. The
That was another
with the
controversy.
with
Yeah,
the gorillas. Yeah.
yeah.
There was. I mean, everything was a controversy then. Yeah.
So, where do you get your news? Online, TV, radio, newspaper, all the above?
I make it a point to do a mixture, all the above, even media outlets I don't agree with, even media outlets that are not as popular. And then I also I skim through the internet, daily, all day long. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
ritual. I check everything. I want to hear,
Hey,
because it obviously helps me for the podcast, because it's mostly political. It's political perspective for the most part. So I try to get as much information from as different perspectives as possible, so I could put my content together. But of course, just to see what's going on and what people are saying. Yeah,
yeah.
everywhere.
I know a lot of people that take pride in the fact that they don't watch or listen to news. And they wear that like a badge of honor. And I'm thinking, I'd like to know what's going on in the world. It affects me. I live here. So,
Yeah,
I want to know what's going on.
and I seem to, especially the last few years, I pay attention to national news, national politics more than I do local news. Local
Yeah.
news I'll hear of. I'll hear it at some point during the day, but it's the national news is what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Even there are news channels I despise, but I'll watch certain things on those channels just to see the perspective.
Yeah.
See what I could make fun of later in a podcast.
Yeah. There you go. Do you read a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the news too. I'm constantly reading on the internet. As far as books, when I have time, which I haven't had time lately, but I like some true crime books, even uh, fiction crime. I like a lot of the James Patterson books, political biographies if it's someone I'm interested in. But
James Patterson has written about 1 million, I think.
yeah. Oh, I've probably read. I know I've read at least 50 of his books. I haven't picked
Okay.
up a good book in a while because it's just been I haven't had the time between business and other things, but I you know doing a lot of news research online, I guess, counts as reading current events. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm always reading.
Okay. So overall, what do you think about the present state of the world?
Well, we're definitely divided, especially as far as the country, but I mean, the world too. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world. I tell people to pay attention to certain things, pay attention to what Iran's doing, because when they're quiet, they're quiet for a reason, just for foreign policy wise. But the world, like anything else, it has its issues. Country, our world, America. I mean, we got to work on that big the big divide, the big divide we have going on. It's there, and it's just not because of one thing. There are just so many things, and unfortunately, again, and I'll sound like a broken record, our government and media does not help the situation. There's that term, don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Oh, yeah.
And it's big with politicians, and it's big with media, because if there's no crisis that's being exploited or politicized, then they got nothing to put on TV.
Yeah.
So they could put their
You
spin
have-
on it, and it
You have to
affects
create
us.
that enemy, somebody to be against, somebody to fear. You have to fight with me, it's the old us and them thing.
And it's never going to go away, because that's been that way since humanity was
Yeah.
invented, since God put us on this planet. There's always a divide. But it's a matter of I like I like to think that Americans, the people of America, not the people that, we put in power to run the government. I feel like we really are smarter than them, but we don't embrace it. And I also believe that we're smarter than mainstream media and just media outlets in general, but we don't embrace it. And I think we really need to sit back and look at the big picture and stop listening to them and stop listening. News is news. The news doesn't change, but the politicizing and the spin on the news is what makes people hate each other in this country. And if one person could listen to me and then maybe they could tell another person, if we stopped and looked at the big picture and stopped listening to government and media and just have discussions with each other. And it's
Yeah.
difficult. It's impossible almost, because where do we get our information from?
Yeah. And
It's
sometimes that makes all the difference.
it does.
Makes all the difference.
It does. It does. This
Are you old enough to remember Walter Cronkite?
yes. Yes.
Now, he told the news. He didn't give his opinion. He gave the news. And at the end, he said, and that's the way it is.
And that's the way it is. And to me, there's a difference. See, that's when news was news.
Yeah.
We don't have news today.
Yeah.
It is all political commentary.
Yeah.
From CNN to NBC to ABC to Newsmax, because I watch them all.
Yeah.
And they're all either left leaning or right leaning, because there's no middle road. The middle road to me is keep your opinions to yourself and you tell me the news. I just want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't need Don Lemon from CNN telling me because I'm a Republican that I support white supremacy. But then again, I don't need Chris Spicer from Newsmax telling me that all Democrats are evil. If you want to have political commentary shows on those news channels, that's great. Do it.
Make it
But
clear.
make it clear,
Yeah.
but don't come off and use your platform and to persuade people as if you're telling the news because this is facts. There's that saying, everyone has an opinion. Or opinions are like, I'll say it, opinions are like assholes. We all have them and they all stink, including
Yeah.
yours and mine.
Yeah.
It's just, I wish it's like saying, you remember when MTV was actually music videos for
Yeah.
hours and hours a
I
day?
do. Yeah.
Okay.
Loved it. I loved it.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
But now you turn on MTV now and it's a bunch of idiots sitting in a beach house talking about going drinking and tanning. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's the same thing nowadays with the news. It's like a reality show.
Yeah. So what about racism, Alan? Do you think it's a big problem in the United States, or is it over talked about?
It's always a problem. Is racism a pandemic? I don't believe so. I mean, I think racism right now is a hot topic again because of who's fanning those flames. I'm going to say the media and the government. Again, I think racism is one of the biggest politicized topics, one of the biggest. And it's not us politicizing it, meaning Americans. It's not to me, when I hear racism, I don't hear black and white. Racism to me is everything, whether it's anti-Semitical, whether it's against the Jews, the Catholics, whites, blacks, browns, whatever you want to call it, it's there. It's always going to be here. It's never going to go away, no matter how much we protest, no matter how much we talk about it on the media, no matter it. I don't believe it is as bad. I know it's not as bad as what the media wants us to believe it's bad.
So do you believe in systemic racism? Do you think that exists?
So it's funny. I always struggle with that term, systemic racism, because there's no true definition of it. I know, you can call it institutional racism, meaning, you're not going to get that job because you're a certain race, or you're not going to get housing because of a certain race. Well, I think that's all BS, because everybody should be getting the jobs they're qualified for and the housing that they can afford. We have laws for that. I mean, we have civil rights, human rights, Fair Housing Act. We have all of that. It's a matter of how it's applied. But is systemic racism a real thing? So to me, it's like that word is thrown around so much, and I feel like there's so many meanings, or it has a meaning of what's the meaning of the day of systemic racism? Is systemic racism meaning that the entire system in this country is racist? Because if that's what people are telling me systemic racism is, then my answer is no, that I don't believe everything.
What about if I remind you that this country was started by and for rich white men? And for many years, it was only rich white men that could even vote. And that was the foundation that everything was built on. What do you
Yeah.
say to that?
To an extent, I can agree with it, because this country, yeah, I mean, the founding fathers, obviously, they were white men, and I guess at the time you can consider them rich and wealthy. You know, the Democratic Party, well, at one time it was the not to get into history lesson, was the only party. I mean, I have this argument sometimes with people and say, well, the Democratic Party then they were the party of segregation and slavery, because they were the ones that supported it and promoted it. And it was the Northern Democrats that broke away and became the Republican Party to fight against the spread of slavery and segregation. But then you get into the whole, Reconstruction and all that. I don't believe today that this country is built on and run by wealthy white men. And the reason why I say that is the 117th Congress that we're in right now. It's the most diverse Congress we've had. So if we had all of this systemic racism in this country, and this country was only meant to be run by rich white men, we wouldn't have a 97% increase in non-white Congress members from a decade ago. The 107th Congress, it was 2001. And I just did this not too long ago on one of the episodes, and it's a 97% increase in non-whites. I have it was like 59 or so African Americans, Congress and Senate, and even women from 10 years ago, women in Congress from 10 years ago almost doubled voting women in Congress between the House and the Senate. I believe it's 24 voting, 24 women in the Senate. There's 24 women, so 24% of the Senate, and I believe it's like 119 women in the House of Reps that are women. So I don't believe a country that's systemically racist is going to be progressively over the years putting more and more people of color and different backgrounds in lawmaking positions. And I love to see that, but what I don't love to see, because listen, racism, again, it's never going to go away. It's going to outlive you. It's going to outlive me. And it's most likely going to outlive my 8-year-old. It's how we're going to deal with it together, because it's not just, again, whites against blacks. And there's racism, whites against blacks. Absolutely. That's, where racism started. But, again, we could have a whole discussion on the Ku Klux Klan and the Democratic Party back then. You also have the racism. I'm white. The black racism against the whites. Look what Coca-Cola just did. Talk about corporations fanning racism, the fanning the hate of racism. A multi-million-dollar corporation brings a woman in and has a training video, and one of the slides says, "Be less white." I grew up in a very diverse community. As a matter of fact, I was the only white kid in my neighborhood. It was very diverse. All of my friends, African American, Hispanic. Those were the two races around me, and they were great people. And there were some African American kids who didn't like me because I was white. I didn't walk around the neighborhood scared getting beat up. It wasn't like that. And like these were my friends. I just racism sucks.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you.
Racism sucks. And what really sucks is how, again, it's politicized. I mean, corporations, media, politicians. What do we do about it?
Do you think white privilege is a real thing?
I didn't benefit from it. I grew up, I didn't go to college. I didn't want to go to college. I barely graduated high school. I hated school. I at my first job at 13 years old, sorting beer cans in one of those beer distributor type places, getting stung by bees every summer at 13. I did what I had to do to work. I own two businesses. I work hard. My parents never owned their house growing up. They rented the house. My father was an auto mechanic. My mother worked for local government, which she's just getting ready to retire from. Is white privilege the same as wealthy privilege? Because I also grew up with a friend, African American, whose both parents were both physicians. They were both surgeons. He had a lot more privilege than I did because of the wealth of his family, and that's great for him. He's an attorney. He's a very well-known, prominent attorney. If my parents maybe were attorneys or a certain type of professional and had a different financial pathway, would it have been easier for me? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm trying to make it as easy for my daughter as possible, but I want her to work and earn it. I think white privilege gets mistaken for wealthy privilege, but that works both ways. But are there instances where there are white people that get something over an African American because of their skin color? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's almost not from saying from you, but you hear that a lot. It's almost a trick question if you think about it. There's all different types of privilege. I mean, there are jobs that wouldn't hire someone because they're white. Not nearly as much as there are jobs that wouldn't hire somebody because they're black. I mean, look at the whole civil rights movement that we went through. That was such horrific times and should have never happened. You figured when Abraham Lincoln abolished slavery, it should have ended right there. Like, you vote, you're equals. It's nonsense that we even have to discuss people getting discriminated against because of the color of their skin. It's disgusting.
Is pretty ridiculous, isn't it? It really is.
It's just, it's horrible. It's horrible. And I want to reset. I want to do the big reset of our government. I'd like to take the top off the Capitol and dump everybody out and just start over. It's funny. I'll stand up. I'm wearing my shirt at the Capitol.
Yeah, there you go.
Here, Control Alt Delete. Let's reset it, Steve. Enough already.
Let's do that, brother. Let's do that.
It's horrible. It's horrible. Racism sucks.
Yeah. I have enjoyed talking with you, Alan.
Me too. This was great. I'll tell you what, Steve, you reach out to me anytime. I would love to talk to you about anything and everything, anytime.
Okay. Well, I'll have you back sometime. So we'll
Awesome.
think about something else to complain about or talk about or whatever.
No, listen. And if your viewers want to come and check me out over on my podcast, it's the Great Divide podcast. I'm available anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iTunes. I have a YouTube channel. It's not video. You just get to stare at a cartoon version of me and listen to me rant. If anything, I hope to think I may be entertaining, whether somebody agrees or with me or not. Just even if they think, this guy's a clown, but he's pretty funny, that's good enough for me.
Hey, they could look at the background you got there and be entertained, man. That's just impressive as hell. Well,
I'm gonna start video very soon. I'm gonna start doing videos. I am.
maybe you can send me a big poster of that I can put behind me, when I do my videos.
You know, what I was messing with just before to let you go on this program that we're on, the Zoom program. You could do the virtual backgrounds. I don't know if you ever messed with that. I was doing it earlier, and I had and just an American flag background there.
You
can do that.
Out.
Yeah, you can do that.
Well, Alan, thanks again for joining me, brother. I appreciate you coming on, and this will be on YouTube, and Facebook, and Twitter, and the audio version will be on Anchor and all them other places. So
good stuff. Thanks for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it. Take care.
You take care. Bye-bye.
All right.